Hello everybody, Tai Chi Twins here. I'm Jeremy Rorty.
And I'm Joshua Rorty.
We did a video a while ago about how to use a walking staff as both a tool and a weapon. We showcased the survival walking staff. We had a lot of you guys request showing you how we made it. Now this is a self-defense channel, not so much a survival channel, but I really feel that survival is a big part of self-defense. Because if you're caught out somewhere and you don't know what to do, you can be in a really bad situation. So at least having some basic survival skills is really important to self-defense. So let's check out how we made these things.
Let's start off talking about what you need. Obviously, you're going to need some PVC pipe. We chose schedule 80 PVC versus schedule 40 PVC because it's got a thicker wall. While that means there's less space on the inside to store items, it does mean that it can put up with more punishment. On top of that, you're going to need some couplers to put on the end to be able to attach your end caps. There are two different end caps we're showing here. One is a PVC end cap that we would use for the top. Alternatively, we found a rum bottle cap that actually had a compass on it that matched the same threading as our couplers. We'll show you how to use that as a compass a little later. Obviously, PVC would take a lot of damage if you're using it as the end that's slamming down into the ground. So for our bottom cap, we used a 1 inch to a 1/4 inch galvanized steel reducer, as well as a steel plug to go into the end. That's not going to take any damage. Now, if you didn't need your walking stick too fancy, put the pieces together and boom, you're done. You've got a survival walking stick for right about 20 bucks. We're going to make a couple of customizations to the staff just to increase its utility. One very simple customization you can do is painting it. If you're going to paint it, make sure you masking tape off the ends where the couplers are going to go. Otherwise, you might have a hard time getting them to connect. Then you'll want to rough up the PVC with some sandpaper to make sure that whatever paint you're going to use is going to stick properly. Jeremy chose bright orange paint for his staff so that it can also act as an emergency signaling device. When you paint it, start off with one coat. After that coat dries, check the color. If it's not quite the color you want, add another coat. You shouldn't have to add more than maybe 2 or 3 coats to get to the correct color. He also wanted to add a measuring device to the staff. These measurements can be used in a variety of tasks, including tracking. We'll talk about how to use it for tracking later. To do this, he added 1 inch masking tape 1 inch apart to create stripes. He also covered the end that he didn't want painted in purple with the paper towel. Now you're ready to paint on your secondary color. While you're at it, don't forget about the couplers and the end caps if you're going to paint those. Once the paint is dried, carefully remove the tape. Notice how the ends aren't painted. That's going to make it easier to slide the couplers on. If you look close, you can see how some of the purple paint bled through onto the orange paint. To fix that, Jeremy simply spray painted onto a piece of paper, and then while the paint was still wet, he took some of it with a Q-tip and added the orange over the purple bleed through. If you don't want to paint your staff, you can make tracking bands instead. With a series of these bands, you can keep track of various measurements like foot length and stride length. For this project, I used an old broken hair tie. The rubber on a hair tie is more resilient than a rubber band, and the cotton lining helps to protect it. We're going to make a continual loop by tying 2 slip knots in the same line. Start by tying a slip knot at one end. Dress the knot, leaving you as little of a tail as possible. Then turn your loop around and tie a slip knot with the other end. Tying your loop in this way allows you to expand or constrict your loop as much as you need it. Now you're ready to add the end caps. And again, if you don't need any other fancy customizations, you're done. To make it more comfortable and easier to carry, we used Paracord to wrap the handle and also to braid a lanyard. This 100 feet of paracord between the handle and the lanyard can be used for various survival tasks. The paint came from another painting project, so in essence that part was free, used very little of it. The paracord, on the other hand, added an extra $5 to $7 to the cost of the project. For the handle wrap, we're going to take one end of our paracord and start by tying a slip knot. It doesn't have to be a complicated knot, we're simply going to use the old adage of the bunny running around the log and then running through the hole. Tighten the knot so it's snug and try not to leave a tail. If you do, you can simply cut it later. When you're done, the working end should be able to slide through the knot. Orient the slip knot so that the working end runs along the bottom. We're going to focus on keeping the same orientation throughout the entire wrap. Place the loop across the handle with the working end wrapping behind the handle. Fold another loop, creating a bite, keeping the working end towards the bottom, and pass that through the first loop. Tighten the line by first pulling on the slip knot. Then follow the working end around and pull on the top half of the second loop. Make sure to keep the working end oriented towards the bottom of the loop. Tighten each course as you go. You may need to use a toggle like this crochet hook to tighten it as much as you can. Again, make sure that the working end is at the bottom of the loop. Then repeat the process by passing the working end behind, folding in another bite, and passing it through the loop. As you tighten it, make sure that the current course lines up underneath the previous course. Continue the process until the handle is as long as you would like. You may notice that the wrapping wants to slide a little bit, but with each course, the wrap will get tighter around the handle. So make sure you keep the orientation where you want it because it may be hard to move later. Then pull the working end until the knot is as tight as you can get it. Finally, tie a stop knot in the line to make sure it doesn't accidentally come undone. When you're done, all of your knots should line up, making for a nice even braid. The main advantage of this style of wrapping is that you can undo as much of the line as you're going to need without having to unwrap the entire handle. Here's a tip. When you start a project with cording, especially paracord, make sure to untwist it by pinching it from the end and dragging the line through your fingers. To make starting the lanyard easier, we're going to start by taking 2 chopsticks or 2 pencils and placing them together. I'm going to start with the tail end pointing towards the right, and then I'm going to wrap the working end around the chopsticks and back over itself towards the tail end. The more wraps you do, the wider your lanyard is going to be. I'm going to use a 4 wrap, which is going to turn into a 5-strand braid. Finish the 4th wrap towards the top of the loops. Once you finish your 4th wrap, fold a bite into the working end and pass it through all 4 loops. Make sure to keep the working end oriented towards the top of the bite. Tighten each of the loops, starting from the end closest to the bite and working towards the tail. The final loop will be tightened by pulling on the bottom half of the bite. When you're done tightening, make sure each one of your 4 loops line up next to each other and that the working end of your bite is oriented towards the top. Once all the loops are nice and snug, pull out a chopstick and tighten again, working from the bite towards the tail end. Remove the final stick and tighten it again. Make sure that the 4 original loops are evenly tightened. The working end should come out right next to the tail. Now you can tighten the bite. Using a toggle can help prevent pulling the bite back through the loops. Now you're ready to start the pattern. Separate each one of the loops, exposing the working end underneath it. Now pull the working end through each one of the spaces, making 3 separate loops. You can use a tool like a crochet hook to help grab the cord. Start from the working end and go towards the toggle. You should now have 4 loops that are big enough to easily pass the cord through. Make sure that there are no twists in the line and that you can easily follow the path of the working end. Next, align the loop so that you can pass another bite through it. Make sure that the working end stays on top of the bite. Starting from the side with the bite, tighten each of the loops working towards the tail. Pull the bottom of the bite to tighten the last loop. Before you move on to your next course, make sure that the working end is on top of the bite. Now just keep repeating the pattern. Pull new loops between the old loops. Align the loop so you can pass another bite through, making sure that the working end stays on the top of the bite. And finally, tighten the loops going from the bite towards the tail. Pull the bottom of the bite to tighten the last loop. Make sure that each course is even before moving on to the next one. Repeat the process as many times as you need till you get the length of the lanyard that you want. When you finish your final course, pass the entire working end through the loops instead of just the bite. Then double back on itself, skipping the first loop and passing back through the other three, making sure that the working end's going the same direction as the tail. Finally, tighten the loops to secure the working end. To finish off the lanyard, tie a slip knot on each end. Where you tie the slip knot will determine how low the lanyard will hang. The advantage of this type of braid is that you can unravel as much cord as you need without unraveling the entire thing. The last modification we're making is with ranger beads. This is just a simple slip knot with two long tails. On one side I have a set of 10 beads which counts my strides. On the other side I have a set of 3 beads, each measuring a quarter mile, and a set of 4 beads which measures the mile. Using a slip knot allows me to easily remove it from the staff and wear it as a bracelet instead. That's how you make a hardware store survival staff for under 30 bucks. What modifications would you make to your hiking staff? Tell us in the comments below. Stay tuned for part 2 where we're going to show you how to use the various features of this survival staff. Then later in part 3 we'll show you what's inside. Thanks for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, like it and make sure to share that with a friend. Click the subscribe button and then hit that notification bell so you can catch our next exciting video.